welcome back to the Green Connection. Hope you've been watching us. And by the way, in case you missed Wednesday at 7:30 in the evening and Thursday at 3:30 in the afternoon, you can catch us on YouTube. And they have most of our old programs also. Actually, I'm a computer idiot and a digital idiot, and I can't even find my own show, but I'll bet you can. Anyway, I'm doing something a little bit different today. I've lived here for years, and I used to visit here for years and go down Broadway and saw lots of changes. And in the 80s, Kathy Rhodes, who used to be the film director for the Convention Bureau, did a brochure called Off Broadway, which I really loved. And I was driving down Broadway, which I do practically every day. I thought, this street is really growing and deserves some attention. And who did I go to get some information on it? But my guest today, Eddie Romero, with San Antonio, and who just finished on Sunday, the end of the month, the Cyclovia on Broadway.
That's right.
Which is a major event and has grown, but there are lots of major events on Broadway. And Eddie knows a lot about Broadway. It's almost as exciting as New York City, but not quite.
Rita, thank you so much for inviting me to the Green Connection. There is tons of energy back on Broadway. The Cyclovia event that took place on Sunday welcomed an estimated 70,000 people.
70,000.
That's right. That's right. And it was amazing. And I'll say, in a few years, after all the development is completed and the complete streets are built, our Broadway is going to be better than New York. I'll go ahead and say that.
Well, in the late 80s and early 90s, Broadway had some streetcar rails on it. And in the beginning, it was the mule-drawn streetcars, and then it came to those with tracks, and Broadway was called River Avenue and Avenue C, right?
That's right. So, any corridor, any street that has a history of brewing beer has to be pretty interesting. And so when I dug into the history of it, I found out that in 1914, the city combined Avenue C and River Avenue to create Broadway.
And relating to the streetcars, in the I believe it was the 90s, when Castro was mayor, they proposed another streetcar line going down Broadway, but it never happened. Maybe one day it will, but it didn't happen then.
Yeah, so there's three things that really catalyzed this revival on Broadway, according to Judge Wolf. He mentioned in a presentation that I saw him give that it was Pearl, it was the Museum Reach extension of the river, and it was Mayor Castro's declaration of the decade of downtown. That really brought about the revival of Broadway.
Well, it's in the beginning, Broadway was not a great street. It was full of crime and poverty, and some restaurants, used car lots, some new car lots. Cavender was a beginner and a pioneer on the street, but actually, the beginning of that whole era was the brewery that started in 1861, I believe, and it wasn't called Pearl at the time, and it stayed for 3 years on the river, but that is what has caused all of the growth on Broadway. And particularly in recent years with the Silver Ventures taking over and with their foresight into keeping the buildings that were there originally and adding to it and not changing it, their idea of preservation and sustainability has been just incredible. And so even though the Pearl is not on Broadway, it had a tremendous influence on the street.
Yeah, we're, as someone that's born and raised in San Antonio, I'm so grateful that someone had, that the Silver Ventures team and Kit Goldsberry had that vision of the Pearl as an urban village. I'm grateful that there was vision from the folks at the San Antonio Museum of Art to put that museum at the old Lone Star Brewery, which is right along Broadway as well. So definitely grateful for that preservation along the corridor. It really makes it distinct from other places in San Antonio.
Well, when they got the who got the brewery, I don't have that information. Anyway, when the brewery changed hands, they got the name Pearl because they imported a German brewmeister, and he poured a glass of beer rather rapidly, and the little bubbles came up, and he said, "It looks like Pearl," and the owner said, "Oh, that's the
right.
name of the
That's
brewery."
a great story. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
the Pearl, and so it could have been champagne, but it just happened to be beer.
That's right, and something that I love about Pearl today is that you can still buy a can of Pearl beer on any day for $2 there, which is pretty great. That's right. They keep
You
it
can't
cold.
get much for $2 anymore.
Well, you can get a can of Pearl beer. That's right.
Well, I can remember when I used to come to visit San Antonio, they had an art gallery up on the top floor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so I used to, the real estate agent that I worked with to get my lot when I built my house, used to take me there and we'd go to the art shows.
Cool.
And then another one of the buildings that has remained on Broadway is the bakery, the light crust.
The Buttercrust Bakery.
Buttercrust.
That's right. That's
And
right.
originally it was the Richter's Bakery from 1985 to 1926. So that's a long time.
It is, and I have some great memories of going there on a field trip as a child in elementary school, because at the end of the field trip you got a slice of freshly baked bread and a wooden ruler that said Buttercrust Bakery on top, but I could still smell that fresh
So
bread.
you're a native San Antonian.
I am.
Well, that's great. And then, well, the bakery closed in 1997. And who took it over? I didn't find that out.
I'm not too sure.
It was vacant
Actually,
for a
I
long
believe
time.
it's is that the Pioneer Mill? I think they took over that building.
It doesn't have a name on it, so I don't know.
Okay.
So, some of the other buildings that were on Broadway, there was some housing, and most of it was very poor housing. In fact, there's a gentleman still living in a house on Broadway, and everybody wants to buy his land, but he's not selling it. So it looks back to the old ages. His is an old house. There were some very fine big houses, and I believe it was one of them, the Herf House on Broadway, 314, was demolished.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so that, then there was the Frontier Drive-In, which started in 1947, and it closed in the 80s, I believe, but they still have a Frontier Drive-In off of 410. And then you have the Thurman's Cafe and Fox Photo, and that has had places all over the city. But the one on Broadway was pretty important, and I think I used to use them a long time ago. It must be a very long time ago. So still on Broadway, or off Broadway, of course, is the Pearl Brewery, which originally was called, and I challenge you to pronounce this, Behlorradsky, Behlorradsky, I said 1861, it was 1881, and it became the San Antonio Brewing Company, and that's when it took the name of Pearl. And we have some old photos of the original buildings, which are still there. They've been redone and brought back to life and added to. And we have a little video on the Pearl, a tour of the current Pearl. It ran on KSAT a couple of years ago. So roll the video.
From a skyrise hotel to an eco-friendly mixed-use building to apartments exploding all around the Pearl, all of them new developments coming to the Broadway corridor. We decided to look into that after a viewer reached out to us, curious about what's going on along Broadway. Sarah Acosta walks us down that busy stretch to talk about the projects that are underway.
Promising signs of coming soon attractions to construction fences around old familiar places. We found 7 locations just north of downtown to Hildebrand. When you first start your drive or walk down Broadway as you leave downtown, you'll see your first construction spot, The Light, future office spaces off McCullough. Then from Brooklyn and 9th, you'll find an eco-friendly building made mostly out of timber for shops, apartments, and restaurants called the Soto, along with other mixed-use buildings. Future apartments here on Jones. A skyrise hotel and office space at Newell, breaking ground this May with a completion goal of 2021. More apartments and shops in front of the Pearl. Shake Shack coming soon on Mulberry, and the closure of one longtime restaurant for a new development on Natalan.
There's pros and cons, I think.
Becky Palmer lives at the Pearl. She says it's a lot of change coming in fast that might push out longtime families with property taxes going up.
Around this area, there are a lot of different income levels for people, so maybe that might be a bummer for people who've lived here a long time and maybe won't be able to continue to afford it.
Overall, it's a good thing.
Javier Pargo also lives near the downtown area. He says he has watched places like the Pearl flourish in just a couple of years and hopes the trend continues along the Broadway corridor.
There's lots of good restaurants, things for the kids to do, something that we were missing before. Yes, it's changing, but I think overall it's positive change and it's something that's a long time coming.
There's not just construction projects going along the Broadway corridor, there's actual road construction also happening on Broadway. This all starts just around Grayson Street to south of the Whitty Museum. It's all part of a SAWS project that started in January when they started putting new sewer pipes in. It's estimated to be complete at the end of March. Myra?
Then we have the pig stand on Broadway, which I believe was the 27th pig stand in Texas. And it's now still there, and we have the original sign, which is kind of interesting. The original sign was a big pig, and the pig was a pulled pork sandwich, and they had little pigs on their counter.
And they still do today. My family and I go to breakfast there. An interesting fact, you mentioned the car dealerships. You know, so there was this rise in the car culture. When they actually built I-35, the pig stand had to move several feet north from from where its original site was because of the construction of 35. So it's pretty interesting history inside that building.
Yeah, there's one on Alamo that they've closed down and is now another place, but that's out near where I live. And then you've got the Travelers Hotel, and you've got the building that's a bus stop now on Broadway. You've got the John Herwick art supply store, which is still there.
That's right.
And you've got, there was a fire station in the 200 block of Broadway, but I don't know, that building isn't there anymore. The 501 Broadway site belonged to Cavender, and we were, not 501, it was 701. The 501 is KLRN. And we have the original building. It was originally built in 1924, and then it was taken over. It used to be Spires Buick originally, and the existing building was added onto, and now it's about 36,000 square feet, and it's home to public television. And then we have the Light Building, which has changed a great deal. It stood empty for a long time. What's happening to it now? I see they're even constructing the building itself. The restoration is fabulous.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. So that is a Gray Street Partners project, and so they are developing the front building and the back print house, and an amazing architecture firm is working on it, Gensler Architecture, who actually have offices on Houston Street in downtown San Antonio. But
what was it?
Gensler.
I don't know them.
Yeah, they're the largest architecture firm in the world, and we have them right here in San Antonio on Houston Street, and they're working specifically on the Light Building project.
Well, they did a beautiful job with the restoration, all of the intricate stonework at the top of the building. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. Yep.
And then we've got Cavender, who Cavender was Cadillac on Broadway. Now they're off of 1604, and they are partnering with Hickson Properties, and they're building what is the name of the building?
The Soto.
Soto. And it's at 711 Broadway, and it's under construction now. It's not finished, is it?
It is not. It is not. But Soto, that in Spanish, that translates to a cluster, a grove of trees.
Oh.
Which is really great.
Oh, so that's why they're building it of all wood. It's one of the first all wood construction commercial buildings in Texas and throughout the United States. And we have a video showing that wood goes in and out. When I first started the Green Connection, wood was out, and we had alternative building materials. Well, now wood is back in, and it's considered very sustainable. So you can roll the video.
Wood, an abundant and renewable natural resource, is suitable for many types of building construction, be it residential or non-residential, light frame or heavy timber frame, low-rise or mid-rise. Wood can be used in various building applications. This is because of the many benefits and positive attributes of wood. The Government of Canada supports the research and development of wood-based construction. A versatile and often cost-effective building material, wood can enable developers to build more quickly and more cheaply. Wood structures are strong, durable, and resilient. They can be designed to resist major earthquakes and hurricane-like winds. Wood can be used to build striking features like roofs, ceilings, walls, and bridges, resulting in visually appealing structures. Wood building materials are also good for the environment. They are renewable, biodegradable, recyclable, and they store carbon, resulting in a smaller environmental footprint than other building materials. In fact, a typical North American wood frame home stores about 30 tons of carbon. This is equivalent to the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by running the family car for over 5 years. Federally supported research continues to demonstrate the many benefits of wood in building construction. Wood, good for building, good for the environment, good for Canada.
Going down Broadway, there been a lot of, not just a lot of traffic, but a lot of interesting things. The parade of the festival, the Battle of the Flowers first started with people decorated their own horse carts to be in the parade. We have some photos on that, and they dressed up and went down the street. And then that was the really early 1900s into the mid 1900s. And in 1963, President John F. Kennedy came down the Broadway for a meeting in San Antonio. He had come from Houston, and he was going to Dallas. And I was in Houston, and I worked with President Johnson, not then President Johnson, and Jack Valenti doing the program for the dinner in Dallas, which never happened. And that was a very sad but exciting time to watch the Kennedy Caravan come down Broadway Street. Then we have things that are more modern, like cyclovia. So what's happening with cyclovia? Eddie here does all of the work on putting cyclovia together.
Well, no, we actually we sponsor. Cyclovia is put on by the YMCA. It happens twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, and it's an invitation for the community to come out and play in the streets. And this year's was a couple days ago on Sunday, and we actually took over a parking lot at 900 Broadway, and we had a splash zone for the kids. We gave away 100 mountain laurel trees. We gave away 100 trees in less than 10 minutes. We had a lot of art activities working with local partners, Henry Ford Academy School for Art and Design, and some lead muralists with Sananto Cultural Arts. Our activation area for Ciclovia was all about being a playful city, a city with art everywhere, and it was a great time. So we look forward to continuing that partnership with the YMCA.
It's not on Broadway. It comes to King William in the spring, right? Or do you?
They changed locations. So it was down Cesar Chavez, down South Alamo, and just Sunday it went from Travis Park to Broadway, all the way north to Funston. So pretty far north.
And the next one is scheduled for when?
They haven't released the date, but it will be in the spring. It'll be in the spring of 2020.
So what do you see for the future of Broadway? We didn't go as far as, we went from the 200 to the 2000 block of Broadway, which does not include the museum reach of the river, and there's still a lot of fill-in that needs to be done. Can you fill us in?
I'm so grateful for all the work that has been done, just leading us to this moment on Broadway, from the museum reach of the river to the Pearl being so thoughtful in their design and in sustainability, to Mayor Castro declaring it the decade of downtown. All that has contributed and led to about 3,500 housing units in the area. And the San Antonio River Authority actually did an economic impact study. And over the past 10 years since the opening of the museum reach, it's generated about $2 billion in economic development, which is outstanding. And there's more to come. I mean, the Soto building that you mentioned, you said.
And it's so interesting that Soto is forced.
It is, and it's.
Did they name it that because of that?
I would imagine so. Yeah, I would imagine so, and because of it being adjacent to the river, because of the namesake of it being, River Avenue. There's so many things that line up, and so the future is bright for Broadway.
Well, the Kitty Park, which has been there since the early 1900s, moved to the zoo, which I understand also Starbucks has taken over their restaurant, which is interesting and good for Starbucks. But going all the way down Broadway, there's still a lot of, are there any plans going residential-wise or commercial-wise? Let's see, the King's Palace, the Chinese restaurant, there's a new building going up there.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, they've got it all fenced off now.
Yeah. What we've been focused on is the going into construction with the $42 million in the bond, in the 2017 bond, that was funded, that was voted on by voters a couple years ago. And that's going to make the Broadway street a destination. Wide sidewalks, shade, street amenities for cyclists, for pedestrians, including seating. That's going to make, that's going to transform Broadway from just being a regular street to a great street, and it's going to complement all the great work that really the city, the community is looking for through their bond projects.
Do you think it'll ever have streetcars again, as the mayor had proposed a few years ago?
Yeah, what I do know is that VIA has identified it as a major transit corridor. So hopefully with that, more frequent stops will come. Hopefully some covered bus shelters will come.
But no streetcars.
What's that?
No streetcars.
Yeah, I think we're set on the new buses and with VIA of being trackless, and the BRT system, the
and now
bus
we're out
rapid
of time.
transit. Oh,
You see how fast 30 minutes goes? This is the Green Connection. We're talking about growing Broadway, and I thank you for watching this. Tell your friends. We are on YouTube. Look forward to seeing you next time. have a happy week. For November, we're going to do veggie holiday cooking. So have a happy week. Stay green.